This one's wife, Harry, and his grief porn. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Worry not, you're not going to be confronted by the vinegar strokes face of Prince Harry as he has a cry wank, though I dare say that has happened on a couple of occasions. No, I'm making reference to phraseology that's utilised by journalist Dan Wootton, who recently has offered his observations by referring to why Harry's relentless grief porn breaks a solemn promise he made to Prince William. Mr. Wootton explained if you saw any coverage of Prince Harry's public comeback in the mainstream media, like him, you would have been frustrated by a lot of his client journalist allies praising him for apparently returning to the man we knew and loved. The media is petrified of the Sussexes and their trigger-happy lawyers these days, so they look for any reason to praise the traitors. As a result, they overlooked the two biggest stories behind the cynical release of Harry's new video with a war widow during a bizarre performance where he sat emotionless, fists clenched, as she poured her heart out, apart from when referencing his mother's death. First, he continues to purposely break an important pact he made with his brother to stop talking about Princess Diana for self-publicity. Second, it was time to divert from coverage of damning new allegations about Harry concealing or deleting evidence in his bombshell court case against the publisher of The Sun, a story that should be dominating the royal agenda. The sad reality is that Harry's career now relies on so-called grief porn. Any time he's in PR trouble, it's what he turns to. I'm not surprised, Mr. Wootton writes, that Prince William is livid about it, given the brothers' solemn pledge in 2017, having cooperated with two tell-all documentaries for the BBC and ITV, to stop the commercialisation of Lady Di's death. But sources close to the Prince of Wales explain that what he believes Harry is now doing, and I think that characterisation is completely accurate. After all, he takes his paycheck from Netflix, a company that recreated the night of Diana's death, right down to a gruesome replica of the mangled Mercedes that they transported to Paris. But there's been far more than that when it comes to invoking Diana for commercial purposes. Harry told Oprah Winfrey that his mother somehow predicted Megxit, ridiculously claiming that he certainly felt her presence throughout this whole process. If that were true, Diana would have been yelling at her youngest to go back to the United Kingdom and support your bloody brother like you were meant to. Harry's revelations in Spare included the fact he had contacted Diana via a spiritualist who told him, "You're living the life she couldn't. You're living the life she wanted for you." He also told how he discovered this one's wife, who refuses to talk to her lovely dad Thomas for his 80th birthday next month, kneeling, eyes shut, palms against the stone at Diana's grave at Althorpe. Or there was the news broken by Mr. Wootton from Kinsey Schofield last month that this one's wife told Harry during their Platinum Jubilee appearance, "Your mum talked to me this morning during yoga, and she's really glad that we're here." So yesterday, we got the Diana death story again, against his brother's explicit wishes. Harry said of his late mother, who died nearly 26 years ago, "You convince yourself that the person you've lost wants you, or you need to be sad for as long as possible to prove to them that they are missed. But then there's this realisation of no, they must want me to be happy." The Diana anecdote, of course, as Harry knew it would, overshadowed coverage of the charity he was meant to be supporting, Scotty's Little Soldiers, including the emotional testimony of its founder, Nicky Scott, whose husband, Corporal Lee Scott, was tragically killed in Afghanistan when their son was just 5. "You have turned your pain into a purpose," Harry assured her, no doubt echoing what he believes he has achieved with his own life. But sadly, Nicky's interview, which was filmed weeks ago, was being used by Harry's PR team to deflect from the real story developing in a London courtroom. Just like the ludicrous announcement from ESPN, which some sources said was rushed out to appease Harry's team, that he would be awarded the Pat Tillman Award for Service, at this year's ESPY Awards, which will be held on July the 11th. See separate video for comment about that in due course. Now, with this grief porn that Mr. Wooten has referenced, it appears to be a diversionary tactic that's been utilised by Prince Harry. But there's something that's stark about its use. Do you recall Harry repeatedly making mention about his mother's death pre-2016? It will have been mentioned. After all, there had been some 19 intervening years since Diana had been tragically killed. But it wasn't something that was habitually raised by Harry. It wasn't something that he shoehorned into every interview. It certainly wasn't something that was covered in a book as he did with Spare. As I commented when I undertook a partial walk through Spare, he would have been better writing separately about his relationship with his mother and the impact of her death, rather than bundling it all up in Spare. The fact is that Harry's grief porn has originated since he has been influenced to put it all out there by none other than his wife. Furthermore, as the narcissist that she is cynically, driven by her narcissism, exploited not only the vulnerability of this individual losing his mother at such a young age, and therefore to some extent being aimless with regard to also an emotionally distant narcissist father, but also the fact that she has manipulated him by cosplaying his mother, manipulating him by making it seem as if she has some connection with Diana's spirit, and thus facilitating the vulnerable beliefs of Harry. It's akin to the cynical behaviour of certain so-called psychics that exploit the grief of individuals who want to maintain some form of connection to people that they've lost by claiming to be able to speak to them. We know that many of these individuals are simply good at cold reading people, and they talk in such vague terms that the grief-stricken individual, not thinking straight and driven by their own emotional thinking, believes that whatever this supposed psychic is saying is applicable to the person that they've lost. With someone who's not that bright, such as Harry, this one's wife is similarly able to exploit him, utilising his grief. Whereas before we heard very little about his grief porn, now it's trotted out with a regularity, because he's been encouraged to do so. His wife, with her lack of boundary recognition, regularly wants to tell the world about her feelings. "Nobody asked me if I was okay," she whinged in Africa. "The royal family didn't support me when I was struggling," she claimed in relation to her supposed suicidal tendencies. And similarly, with that mindset of believing that the world wants to know everything about her, that there should always be these feelings spoken about and there's no such thing as discretion, the fact that she has no boundary recognition and this sense of entitlement, she has similarly encouraged Harry to trot out his own grief, but also as part of her manipulation of him and her manipulation of the public as a whole to try and cause them to feel sorry for Harry and also her, to make them seem that they are compassionate, feeling individuals. And it stands out a mile that this grief porn, as Mr. Wooten calls it, that is engaged in by Harry, has been entirely influenced by his narcissist wife and has only come onto the scene post his involvement with her. Yet another factor in Harry's life which has been taken a turn for the worse as a consequence of his ensnarement. Do you agree? Do you also see that Harry's involvement in this grief porn has come about since he's been involved with this one's wife? Do you see that it is used cynically these days? What do you think that Harry ought to do about it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.